Late last night, Jack Smith, the former special counsel, I guess I should say, released his investigative report on Donald Trump. Now, I'm going to allow Josh to correct me if I'm wrong, but releasing a report when you've dropped the entire thing is really just one last attempt at a public smear. But I want to hear what Josh has to say about it. He's the one who knows. Joining me now, my friend, host of America on Trial, and new father, Josh Hammer. Josh, why release the report?
Jesse, always great to join you, my good friend. So this is somewhat unusual insofar as, by the way, he's not merely former special counsel. He's former so-called special counsel, Jack Smith, because he's not actually a special counsel in the first place. I mean, Jack Smith is a special counsel, as one of my friends put it to me earlier today, the same way that the so-called Black Hebrew Israelites are Israelites. I mean, he is a fake special counsel, which is why he was dismissed from the Florida case by Judge Aileen Cannon in Florida back in July. Clarence Thomas in the Trump versus United States SCOTUS opinion back on July 1 had the same conclusion there. So he was illegitimate from the get-go there. But he ultimately faced reality and moved to withdraw both of his cases against Donald Trump in both Florida, the classified docs case at Mar-a-Lago, as well as the January 6, 2020 election case in D.C. there. And it is somewhat unusual to have a prosecutor who has moved to remove his own cases, who has not actually taken those cases to its logical conclusion. He has not taken it to a judge. He's not taken it to a jury. You've not gotten a guilt, an acquittal, a mistrial. There's been no result other than you moving to remove your own case. It is a little unusual to then have the ability to file a final report. So I was hoping that Judge Cannon and the other judges involved here might have just prevented this from happening in the first place there, because you basically forfeited your ability to do so, from my perspective, when you yourself, dude, moved to end these cases and terminate them there. But to your point, the reason that he's trying to do this there is because he's trying to write for the history books. He's trying to preserve the perceived legitimacy of his years-long legal jihad. He is trying to convince generations of high schoolers, of law students, 10, 20, 30 years from now, that he was in the right and that you, the American people, the voter, were in the wrong. Unfortunately for Jack Smith, for Merrick Garland, for Joe Biden, frankly, unfortunately for Alvin Bragg, for Fani Willis, for all the various tentacles of what I like to call the Democrat lawfare complex, unfortunately for them, history is written by the winners. History is not written by the losers. So Jack Smith is trying to write and make a play here for the history books, but he's fundamentally going to come up short, I think.
But did they lose, Josh? I mean, in the end, yes, Donald Trump won the election, of course, but Fani Willis, you and I both know she's going to get reelected or even move up. Alvin Bragg, his sham trials in New York, they're not going to hurt Alvin Bragg's career. He's going to run on those, and he's going to be a senator, a governor, or something else. They didn't lose in the end, right?
Well, on an individual level, I mean, Fani Willis in Fulton County, Georgia, you're right. I mean, that's Atlanta. That is a very, very blue jurisdiction these days. Alvin Bragg is in Manhattan. That is probably even further left, or maybe slightly less left, but similar. But I think they lost, Jesse, kind of zooming out insofar as they lost the election. I mean, they lost what they were purportedly trying to do, which was to try to derail Donald Trump's primary campaign in the GOP primary, and more to the point, to make sure that he would not be elected as the 47th president of the United States. That, above all, is what they were trying to do there. And once upon a time, in the eyes of the mainstream legal commentariat there, they viewed a lot of these cases as open and shut, ironclad cases. The way that MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, and so forth, the way that they used to talk about the case in Washington, D.C. in particular, the marquee case of the Democrat lawfare complex, the January 6, 2020 case there, they were saying that this was the safest thing imaginable, or the safest thing, at least in decades there. And it all fell apart. Not only did it all fall apart, but it had the reverse effect. It had the effect of boosting Donald Trump in the primary over his primary competitors, and it had the effect of boosting him in the general election as well. The American people were not having it with this lawfare. So yes, they have succeeded to an extent insofar as they have set an extraordinarily dangerous precedent. We have crossed not merely the Rubicon, we've crossed, frankly, the Atlantic Ocean at this point there when it comes to trying to turn America into a third world, sub-Saharan Africa, tin pot dictatorship. I'm not sure when we're going to get back from that abyss anytime soon or anything there, but they fundamentally have lost when it comes to their overall number one mission to derail Donald Trump.
Okay, what about this case against Hunter Biden? David Weiss released his final report. What are we supposed to make of all this?
Well, David Weiss is basically excoriating Joe Biden here for having the temerity to criticize the Justice Department. Now, this case was interesting from the get-go, right? So David Weiss was the special counsel on Hunter Biden. He was also the U.S. attorney for Delaware, which, by the way, is kind of odd because a sitting active U.S. attorney is not supposed to actually be a special counsel. The DOJ has protocols that purportedly exist to prevent exactly that from happening. No one seemed to care, which, as a lawyer, I continue to find a little odd there. But David Weiss did pursue the gun case against Hunter Biden in Delaware through to a conviction. He almost assuredly was going to be able to get a conviction out in Los Angeles as well, before they ultimately got that plea deal the week that trial in Los Angeles in September was about to get started there. And then we all, look, the whole world saw what Joe Biden did. I mean, he reversed his, approximately 5,000 times that he said he was not going to pardon his son. He reversed all of that in the blink of an eye there. He pardons his son. And then he says that the Justice Department handled this in an improper and politicized manner. I'm sorry, Mr. President. When Donald Trump was saying the exact same thing about former so-called special counsel Jack Smith, when Donald Trump was saying all those exact same things, Joe Biden was saying, oh, he's sowing the seeds of discord in the justice system. Oh, he's trying to destabilize the Constitution, fascist, tyrant, Hitler, Nazi, whatever there. So surely what's good for the goose is good for the gander there. So that's basically a little bit of what David Weiss has here in his report. He's basically saying, Mr. President, I mean, look, you have the pardon power. In theory, you can do what you want, even if it is something as venal and corrupt and self-dealing and grossly cynical as the Hunter Biden pardon. You theoretically have that power within your legitimate constitutional authority, but don't do what you criticize your opponent of doing insofar as trying to criticize the Justice Department. In this case, it's doubly embarrassing because it's actually Joe Biden's own Justice Department. If you really cared that much, you could have fired David Weiss, special counsel, and prevented it from getting to this point.
Josh, how did those two get crossways? Because David Weiss may have done all that, but David Weiss was obviously put there to run cover for Hunter, gave him a sweetheart deal that was going to get through in Delaware, if not for a judge. And now those two are taking little pot shots like high school girls at each other. Is it just because Joe Biden called him politicized?
Well, you're totally right. So just to be clear here, David Weiss, he brought two prosecutions against Hunter Biden. There was this gun case involving this revolver that Hunter Biden literally wrote about in his book. I mean, first of all, what a moron you have to be to literally admit to a federal crime in an actual book. You actually had prosecutors reading from Hunter Biden's book at that trial. I'm serious, Jesse. Man, how stupid do you have to be, right? So he brought this gun case against Hunter Biden in Delaware, and then he brought this tax case out in Los Angeles, which was similarly ironclad before they reached a plea deal. But he deliberately slow-walked everything else. So FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which Hunter Biden was guilty as a clam of violating on behalf of Burisma and Ukraine in particular, arguably also Romania, China, maybe other countries as well, but definitely Ukraine. FARA has a 5-year statute of limitations, and David Weiss slow-walked the crap out of his investigation there. It seemed to many of us like he was trying to slow-walk away that 5-year statute of limitations so as to basically try to land the Hunter Biden plane safely, so to speak there. So you're totally right there. But yeah, but now they're at odds there because Joe Biden, if I can psychoanalyze Joe Biden just for a second here, he has the fragile ego of a kindergartner. This is someone who is the oldest president in American history, but he has the ego of someone who is like 1/20th or a 30th or whatever of his age. If you criticize Joe Biden at all there, he is going to lash out at you. He has an infamous temper. He cannot stand being criticized whatsoever there. So that's basically, I think, where this is coming from. But you're totally right. David Weiss was trying to help Joe Biden, and I guess he has now found out what happens when you try to help a man as fickle and frankly irascible as Joe Biden.
Irascible. That's a great word. I'm going to figure out how to use that word, and I'm going to say it in a sentence later on today. All right, Josh, finally, I saw the Washington Post, one of the more despicable papers in the United States of America. They put out the list of Trump nominees they approve of and disapprove of. And one of the ones they approved of concerns me, Josh, because it's the Washington Post and because in my mind there is nothing more important than the DOJ stopping the government protection racket it has become. Pam Bondi got a big fat thumbs up from the Washington Post. Now, everybody I talk to speaks highly of Pam Bondi. I'm not here to trash her reputation, but if the Washington Post likes her, Josh, I have concerns.
Jesse, look, I mean, Pam Bondi would not have been my number one pick, if I'm being very candid with you. She is not who I would have personally advised Donald Trump to pick for attorney general there. But she's perfectly serviceable. I mean, she's going to do a perfectly fine job there. You know, she was a two-term attorney general of my state, the state of Florida, and she was a leading conservative crusader during her years as state attorney general. She was one of the tips of the spears against Obamacare back when that was a fight. She actually fought pretty courageously, if memory serves, on the same-sex marriage issue as well, before the Supreme Court took that off the table in the Obergefell case of 2015 there. My only objection to Pam Bondi is that I think she's somewhat of yesterday's news. She was Attorney General of Florida, if memory serves, from 2011 to 2019 there. I would have encouraged to go with a slightly younger, sprucier pick, someone who maybe is a sitting current active attorney general, someone like a Ken Paxton in Texas or something like that there. But she's perfectly fine. I have no actual objections to Pam Bondi. She actually was a registered agent of the Qatari government years ago. I'm told that is well in the past. It's no longer an issue, thank God, because that actually would have been troublesome, but I'm told it's no longer an issue there. The Washington Post, I'm not entirely sure why they're giving her a thumbs up. I mean, you know, she probably does not agree with them on the overwhelming majority of issues. Maybe it is the Qatar connection, frankly, because the Washington Post does take a lot of Qatari money. So maybe that is actually what's going on there, but I can't really figure out what else might be going on.
Josh, thank you, my friend. Enjoy your new baby.
Thanks.
All right. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.